Hey everyone! Ready to dive deep into the world of Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort? Released on October 21st, 2014. This film has sparked endless discussions, and today, we're uncovering every thrilling detail. If you enjoy this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us grow. And for more incredible movie explorations and hidden gems, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's unravel the magic behind this cinematic masterpiece. On October 21st, 2014, Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort made its way into the horror landscape, marking the sixth entry in a franchise that has kept horror fans on the edge of their seats for nearly a decade. If you thought the Wrong Turn series was running out of gas, think again. Last Resort took the beloved formula of twisted backwards terror to new, gory heights, offering both fans and newcomers a chance to dive deep into a world of mutated cannibals, dark family secrets, and unrelenting survival horror. But beyond the brutal slashing and shocking moments, this film offers something unique, a glimpse into the darker side of humanity's twisted roots, a chilling reminder that some families aren't just blood relatives, they're part of an ancient, terrifying legacy. Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort stands out in many ways, but perhaps its most compelling aspect is how it takes the raw, survival horror DNA of the previous films and weaves in a deeply unsettling family drama. It doesn't just rely on gore and violence for shock value, although, of course, it delivers plenty of both. But it builds an atmosphere that's genuinely oppressive, with visuals that contrast the beauty of the surrounding woods against the horror lurking beneath the surface. It's a rare breed of slasher movie that pairs traditional elements with a surprising, almost tragic sense of fate. The film begins with the introduction of Dany, a man who's just come into possession of a family resort, a seemingly perfect slice of paradise located in the middle of nowhere. It's a strange inheritance, but as we soon learn, there's more to the story. Dany, played by Ilott, isn't just an ordinary guy. It turns out that his family has a long and horrific history, one that has been buried for far too long. His quest to discover who he really is leads him into the heart of an isolated, grotesque nightmare, where the horrifying truths about his lineage begin to surface, and not in the way he ever imagined. The plot unfolds in classic Wrong Turn fashion. Friends and loved ones arrive at the resort, only to be systematically picked off by the twisted, mutant inhabitants who call this remote area home. However, what separates this entry from the rest of the series is the gradual reveal of Dany's horrifying connection to the very mutants who stalk him and his companions. It's no longer just a fight for survival. It's a battle to escape the horrific fate that is tied to his bloodline. This shift from mere survival to existential horror, what happens when you realize you can't escape your own dark roots, gives the film a unique psychological edge. What makes Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort truly worth exploring is the way it builds tension, not only through its gruesome kills and terrifying mutants, but through its exploration of family, inheritance, and tradition. The horror here isn't just external, it's internal, too. Dany's discovery that his family has been involved in a long-standing tradition of cannibalism and brutal rituals is shocking, but it also forces the character, and, by extension, the audience, to confront the idea of being forever bound to something monstrous. Can you ever truly escape the darkness of your ancestry? It's a powerful question that gives the movie a weight that many other slasher films lack. As the story progresses, the gruesome deaths pile up, each one more brutal than the last. There's an undeniable sense of dread that builds as the characters are picked off one by one, their fates sealed by the horrifying legacy that Dany has just begun to understand. It's a game of cat and mouse, but with a twist. The mutants who torment them are not simply mindless killers. They operate within a code, a strange form of ritualistic order. The disturbing thing about these characters is not just their hideous appearance or their terrifying methods of torture, but the way they seem to find joy in their actions. They don't just kill to survive. They kill as part of an ancestral legacy that they take pride in. It's a level of madness that goes beyond mere survival. It's rooted in something much deeper, more primal, and much more terrifying. The performances in Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort help elevate it beyond what could have easily been a generic slasher film. Ilott brings a raw intensity to the role of Dany, a man torn between wanting to know the truth and being horrified by what he finds. His emotional struggle adds depth to the character and makes his plight resonate with the audience. As Dany becomes more entangled in the horrific events, his desperation becomes palpable. He's not just running from the mutants. He's running from the past, from the very blood that courses through his veins. It's a powerful portrayal of a man caught between two worlds, the one he thought he knew and the nightmarish reality he's inherited. The visuals in Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort are striking, with a contrast between the beauty of the resort and the sheer horror that takes place within its walls. The idyllic setting of the remote area, surrounded by dense forests and secluded from the outside world, becomes a prison for Dany and his friends. There's an oppressive feeling to the place, as though it's closing in on them, suffocating them with its quiet, insidious presence. The serene backdrop only amplifies the horror, making every gory scene more shocking. The director, Valeri Milev, does an excellent job of using the environment to create an almost suffocating atmosphere, where the characters are trapped not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically as well. The resort itself becomes a character, an inescapable symbol of the evil that has festered within the family for generations. But perhaps the most significant thing about Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort is the way it pushes the boundaries of what a typical slasher film can be. It's not just about the gruesome kills, it's about the terror that lies within the family unit, within the bonds that tie us to our ancestry. It's a stark reminder that some families have secrets so dark, so twisted, that they should never be uncovered. As Dany's friends are picked off one by one, he's forced to reckon with the realization that escaping his bloodline might not be possible. The brutal, almost tragic final act of the film leaves viewers with a sense of unease, a feeling that the past cannot be outrun, no matter how hard you try. In a genre that often leans heavily on gore and shock value, Wrong Turn 6 stands out for its ability to balance the visceral horror with a thought-provoking narrative. It takes the elements that have made the franchise popular, mutants, brutal kills, remote settings, and adds layers of depth with its exploration of family, inheritance, and survival. The result is a film that not only provides the thrills fans expect, but also makes them think about the darker side of humanity and the price of uncovering painful truths. Over time, Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort has become a cult favorite among horror fans, particularly those who appreciate the way it expands on the series' mythos. While it may not have garnered the same widespread acclaim as some other entries in the Wrong Turn franchise, it has nonetheless carved out its own niche, becoming a film that is dissected and discussed among fans who recognize its unique place in horror history. It's a movie that, while filled with blood, guts, and gore, also invites a deeper look at what it means to be haunted by one's own lineage and the terror that can lurk in the shadows of family secrets. For anyone who loves horror that goes beyond the surface, Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort is more than just another slasher flick. It's a disturbing and engaging exploration of the horrors of inheritance, bloodlines, and legacy. It reminds us that the past is never truly gone. It lingers, waiting to rise again when we least expect it. If you haven't experienced it yet, dive deep into this unsettling tale and prepare for a journey into the heart of horror that's as psychological as it is visceral. You might never look at family the same way again. The sun is setting on a quiet, seemingly idyllic stretch of forest, but beneath the golden hues lies an ominous foreboding that we, as viewers, can't yet fully grasp. The journey begins with a man named Dany, played by Ilott, who's about to face a truth so horrifying, it'll shake the very foundations of his understanding of who he is and where he comes from. Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort kicks off with Dany's discovery that he has inherited a sprawling, luxurious resort located deep within the heart of the woods, a place that seems almost too perfect. At first, Dany's arrival at the resort seems like the beginning of a new chapter in his life. A fresh start, a chance to connect with something that was once his. But as we will soon learn, nothing in this world is ever as it seems. Dany's discovery of his new inheritance begins with a mysterious letter informing him that he has been named the sole heir to a family estate, a resort tucked away far from civilization. This news is both shocking and bewildering. Who could have left him this gift? And why? With no answers, but with the allure of something new, Dany embarks on a road trip with a group of friends to explore this hidden paradise. The group consists of his girlfriend, Toni, his best friend, Chris, and a few others, each one a key part of the unraveling story. Together, they set out for the remote resort, eager for a break from their everyday lives and perhaps hoping for the sort of escape that only the wilderness can provide. What they don't know, however, is that they're about to step into a nightmare far worse than they could ever imagine. As the group travels deeper into the dense forests, the sense of unease begins to grow. The picturesque beauty of the surrounding woods, with its towering trees and winding paths, seems too perfect, a calm before the storm. But then, a subtle shift. A warning. The first sign that something's wrong comes when they arrive at a rundown gas station. The mechanic, a grizzled and unsettling man, seems oddly aware of their destination. His strange, cryptic warnings feel out of place, but it's not until the group pulls away, laughing off the bizarre encounter, that the unease really begins to sink in. Arriving at the resort, the group is greeted by an eerie sense of isolation. The place is luxurious but feels strangely deserted, as though it's meant to be a getaway from the world but also a place meant to keep them trapped. The first few moments inside the sprawling estate are filled with awe and curiosity. The grand, rustic architecture, the opulent furnishings, everything screams wealth, history, and mystery. But the emptiness of the place is palpable. There are signs of life, but no real inhabitants. It's like stepping into a space that's been suspended in time, waiting for someone to arrive and fulfill whatever role they are meant to play in its dark history. It's not long before Dany's friends begin to unravel the hidden layers of the resort. Each corner reveals strange objects and eerie symbols, signs of rituals, things that seem out of place for a supposedly relaxing retreat. Even as they explore, there's a growing sense that they are being watched, something that Dany can't shake. He begins to feel like an intruder in his own inheritance, as if the place doesn't want him there. Still, the group presses on, each member trying to find enjoyment in what is becoming a strange and increasingly uncomfortable weekend getaway. The tension escalates further when a member of the group, the shy and somewhat naive Chris, ventures off into the woods alone. It's here that we witness the first of many chilling moments that foreshadow the horrific events to come. As Chris stumbles through the forest, he unknowingly crosses into territory that is far from normal. He stumbles upon a gruesome scene, a mutilated body, half hidden among the trees. The grotesque sight is a wake-up call, but Chris, in his horror, only gets a fleeting glance before the shadows swallow the truth. This discovery sets the tone for the entire movie, a clear signal that something monstrous is lurking beneath the surface. Yet, his friends dismiss his claims, chalking it up to an overactive imagination. But the unease is now thick, palpable, a warning they can no longer ignore. Dany's quest to uncover the truth about his inheritance begins to take shape. As he digs deeper into the history of the resort and its origins, he discovers that the land has been in his family for generations, a place shrouded in mystery. But the more he uncovers, the more he realizes that his family's legacy is tainted with dark, horrific traditions. Traditions that involve the grotesque acts of cannibalism and ritualistic violence. Dany's attempts to reach out to the one remaining relative who might hold the answers, the manager of the resort, are met with dead ends. There is no one to help him. The truth about his bloodline, about the family that's tied to this land, is darker and more twisted than he could ever have anticipated. Tensions boil over during an impromptu celebration at the resort. As the group parties in the main hall, laughter and music fill the air, but the strange atmosphere grows heavier by the minute. The horrors of the resort seem to be closing in, and the feeling that something is terribly wrong begins to creep into every conversation. The more the group tries to convince themselves that everything is fine, the more they realize that they are being watched. Every step they take, every room they explore, brings them closer to the truth. And, perhaps more disturbingly, it brings them closer to the horrifying presence that lurks in the shadows. That night, the darkness falls, and with it comes a new wave of terror. One by one, the friends begin to disappear. They start to vanish into the darkness of the forest, taken by an unknown force. Their screams echo into the night, but no one hears them. No one comes to help. The group is becoming increasingly fragmented as trust starts to erode, and fear begins to take hold. The once safe confines of the resort now seem like a prison, and Dany, who was once eager to understand his heritage, begins to realize that the very place he sought answers from is the source of his nightmare. As his friends vanish and the night grows more dangerous, Dany's understanding of his past shifts violently. A key turning point occurs when Dany stumbles upon the horrifying truth about his family. The history of cannibalism, murder, and grotesque rituals is not just a distant memory, it's an ongoing practice. The mutants, the twisted family members who haunt this land, are the physical manifestation of this dark legacy. These mutants aren't just monstrous figures hiding in the woods, they are his relatives, the terrifying offspring of a long line of deformed and inbred family members who have carried on the bloody rituals of their ancestors. The mutants are not mindless killers, they are part of a twisted family unit, operating according to rules and traditions that are rooted deep in the bloodline Dany now finds himself a part of. He's not just an outsider looking in, he's one of them. The moment of realization is both terrifying and heartbreaking. Dany's initial shock gives way to a desperate determination to survive, but it also forces him to confront a reality that is impossible to escape. He may have inherited a fortune, but he's also inherited a legacy of death and violence, a heritage that binds him to the very creatures that are now hunting him and his friends. This knowledge is too much to bear, but it's a burden that Dany must carry. In a harrowing sequence, as the mutants begin to close in, Dany faces a brutal, gut-wrenching choice: to flee from the horrors of his past, or to accept them and try to save his remaining friends. The first half of the film culminates in a frenzied attempt to escape, but the characters are caught in a seemingly inescapable web. The once stunning resort, now a place of death, is closing in on them, and the woods beyond the resort seem to be filled with the twisted remains of his family's legacy. By the time the first half of Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort concludes, the stakes have been set impossibly high. The horror that has been slowly revealed is now at full force, and Dany's journey is no longer just about survival. It's about confronting the dark legacy of his bloodline. As his friends continue to vanish, and as he begins to understand the true horror of his inheritance, the audience is left with no choice but to brace for the inevitable. The calm, serene backdrop of the woods that once seemed like an escape now seems like the ultimate prison, and Dany's fate is as horrifying as it is inevitable. As the second half of Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort unfolds, the tension, chaos, and the ultimate horror of Dany's family legacy become inescapably entwined. The audience is no longer just watching a slasher film unfold but experiencing a visceral, heart-pounding descent into madness. As Dany grapples with the truth about his bloodline, the stakes only rise higher. The shocking revelation about the resort's dark past has already set the stage for a battle not just for survival but for sanity. What began as an innocent trip for Dany and his friends has now transformed into a relentless nightmare, where the very walls of the resort seem to close in on them, and every corner hides something far worse than they could ever have imagined. The immediate aftermath of the first half's bloodbath leaves Dany reeling, not only from the brutal deaths of his friends but from the overwhelming truth he now faces. The mutants, the grotesque offspring of his bloodline, these inbred horrors, are not just enemies to fight off, but a perverse family he is inexplicably tied to. The horror of his inheritance, the undeniable connection between him and the gruesome figures that lurk within the woods, sends Dany spiraling into a desperate search for answers, for escape, and perhaps most painfully, for redemption. The tension that had already been building now reaches its peak as Dany realizes there is no way out. The resort, which had initially seemed like an idyllic retreat, has become a death trap. As the night stretches on and more of Dany's friends fall victim to the violent mutants, the remaining survivors, Dany and his girlfriend Toni, find themselves cornered. They are being hunted, not just by mindless killers, but by the very essence of Dany's dark inheritance. The mutants who stalk them are not strangers. They are the grotesque members of his own twisted family, and that realization brings a level of terror that is deeply personal. The stakes have shifted from escape to a moral quandary. Can Dany truly escape the monster he's tied to, or will his lineage drag him down into the same madness that has plagued his ancestors? Toni, Dany's girlfriend, becomes an increasingly crucial character in the second half. She's not just another victim in the story. She represents the last tether to a normal life that Dany can hold on to. The relationship between Dany and Toni, once a grounding force in his life, begins to fray as the horrors around them become too much to bear. There's a palpable sense of dread as they realize that Toni, too, may not survive the night. The connection between the two becomes emotionally charged, and their struggles to keep their bond intact while fighting for their lives against an unstoppable force heightens the emotional stakes. The pivotal moment in the second half comes when the true scale of the mutants' existence is revealed. The mutants are not just a scattered group of cannibalistic individuals hiding in the woods. They are part of an organized, almost ritualistic society with deep roots in Dany's family's history. This discovery transforms the narrative from a typical slasher into something far more insidious. Dany begins to piece together the horrifying legacy of his ancestors. Their horrific cannibalistic practices weren't born out of necessity. They were born out of ritual, tradition, and the twisted idea that bloodline purity could only be achieved through gruesome acts of violence. One of the most disturbing revelations comes when Dany is forced to confront his own connection to the mutants in a brutal, eye-opening sequence. He's not merely a descendant. He's part of a bloodline that has been carefully protected and manipulated over generations, ensuring that the family's terrifying customs would survive. The mutants, their appearance, their behavior, and their complete lack of empathy, are the results of years of inbreeding and indoctrination into a perverse ideology. It's not simply a matter of survival for them. It's a matter of pride, of continuity, of ensuring that their twisted family legacy endures. As Dany delves deeper into his family's history, the dark secrets he uncovers leave him horrified. His ancestors were not just monstrous. They were manipulative, controlling, and devoid of humanity. The resort, which Dany believed was a mere getaway, turns out to be the centerpiece of a much larger and more horrifying operation. The mutants have been bred to maintain this horrifying tradition, and they live by the strict code passed down through generations. For Dany, it becomes clear that he is not just a passive heir. He is the latest link in this nightmarish chain of events, and he will either continue the legacy or break free from it. Amidst the chaos, there are several key moments that propel the story forward with breathless urgency. One of the most chilling sequences occurs when Dany and Toni are forced to flee into the woods, pursued by the mutants. It's a classic cat-and-mouse game, but this time, the stakes are deeply personal. The mutants aren't just faceless killers, they're Dany's kin, and that fact makes every moment of terror feel even more intimate. As Dany and Toni fight for survival, they are not only battling for their lives, but also for a sense of identity. What does it mean for Dany to fight these monsters? Are they truly monsters, or are they simply the result of his family's horrific choices? It's a haunting question that hangs over every move he makes. In a tense, heart-pounding confrontation with the mutants, the group's desperate fight for survival becomes even more desperate. One by one, the mutants attack, each encounter more violent and unrelenting than the last. But it is the emotional and psychological toll of the chase that truly weighs on Dany. He's not just trying to survive. He's trying to make sense of a reality that has been thrust upon him. With Toni by his side, he faces off against the mutants, hoping against hope that there is a way out, a way to end the nightmare. At one point, Toni is captured by the mutants, and the emotional weight of this moment is immense. Her abduction forces Dany into a desperate race against time. He must now face not just the grotesque mutants but also the deeply ingrained terror that comes with realizing he may never escape the past. This moment marks a turning point in the narrative. No longer just a man trying to survive, Dany must now confront his family's legacy head-on, even if it means confronting the darkest aspects of himself. As the climax approaches, the full extent of Dany's personal struggle comes to light. He faces a moment of reckoning. Will he accept his place in the horrific lineage of his family, or will he attempt to destroy the twisted legacy that has led him to this point? This internal conflict mirrors the external chaos as the mutants close in on him and Toni. Dany's survival now depends not just on evading the mutants, but on rejecting the monstrous inheritance that ties him to them. The final confrontation between Dany, Toni, and the mutants is both brutal and heart-wrenching. It's not just a fight for survival. It's a fight for freedom from a bloodline that has enslaved them both physically and emotionally. In a devastating twist, it is revealed that Dany's true role in this horrific saga has been sealed long before his arrival at the resort. The mutants, led by a terrifying patriarch figure, force Dany to make an impossible choice: to become one of them or to die. The emotional weight of this moment is profound, as Dany realizes that his very survival means embracing a legacy of death and destruction. But in an unexpected, desperate act of defiance, Dany takes control of his fate. The chaos of the final battle, with bodies falling and blood spilling, serves as both the climax and a grim resolution to the narrative. Dany and Toni fight to the bitter end, pushing themselves beyond the limits of endurance, until finally, Dany makes the ultimate decision. He chooses to break free from the curse of his family's past. In the final moments of the film, the mutants are defeated, but the victory is bittersweet. Dany and Toni are left standing, their futures uncertain. They've survived, but at what cost? The haunting images of the mutants, the bloodshed, and the endless cycle of violence continue to linger in the air, as Dany's once glorious inheritance crumbles into nothing. As the film fades out, viewers are left with a lingering sense of unease, as though the past is never truly gone, and the horrors of Dany's legacy will continue to haunt him forever. Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort concludes with an unsettling sense of resolution, but the darkness remains. What Dany has learned about his bloodline will never leave him. The terror of the mutants may have ended, but the horrors of his heritage are something he can never truly escape. The film closes with a quiet, haunting shot of the forest, once a place of beauty, now a symbol of the dark legacy that will continue to haunt Dany and the land he was born to. In Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort, the characters' journeys are steeped in layers of complexity, driven by their motivations, struggles, and terrifying revelations. As the story unfolds, each individual is forced to confront not only the nightmarish forces that lurk in the woods but also the dark legacies that tie them to this twisted, horrifying world. The characters' arcs are deeply intertwined with the resort's sinister history, the monstrous family legacy, and the horrors that surface as they unravel the truth. Their transformations are as much about the terror they endure as they are about the emotional and psychological toll the resort and its dark past exact on them. Dany, the film's central protagonist, is a young man seeking solace in the wake of an uncertain past. Played by Ilott, Dany is initially introduced as a typical everyman figure. His motivations are rooted in curiosity and a desire to understand who he is, specifically in relation to the mysterious inheritance that leads him to the secluded resort. When he first learns that he's inherited a sprawling, luxurious property, it's a moment of hope, a glimmer of new beginnings. His connection to the resort, however, soon takes on a far more sinister tone. Dany's initial excitement gives way to shock, and ultimately horror, as the layers of his family's horrifying legacy begin to peel away. Dany's transformation throughout the film is nothing short of gripping. At the beginning, he's hopeful, seeking a fresh start. However, as the gruesome truth about his bloodline comes to light, he's forced to confront the monsters within his family and himself. His emotional and mental breakdown is both a survival mechanism and a painful awakening to the realities of his twisted ancestry. The true crux of Dany's arc is his struggle to break free from the suffocating grip of his family's dark legacy, particularly when he realizes that, in some ways, he is becoming part of that terrifying cycle. The movie crafts his evolution with precision. He moves from the naive hope of a man seeking his roots to a tortured soul fighting desperately to escape the darkness that has shaped him. His battle is both internal and external, as he becomes the last line of defense between his remaining friends and the brutal mutants that haunt the resort. Ilott's performance as Dany anchors the entire film. He brings to life a character who is relatable at first, a man who is eager to understand the inheritance that fate has thrust upon him. As the horrors unfold, Ilott's portrayal of Dany's emotional arc, from disbelief to horror to acceptance, is poignant and intense. His vulnerability and struggle to maintain his humanity in the face of overwhelming terror make Dany's journey unforgettable. Whether he's running through the woods, trying to outsmart the mutants, or coming to grips with the horrifying truth about his lineage, Ilott's performance ensures that every moment feels raw and emotionally charged. Toni, Dany's girlfriend, is another pivotal character who plays an essential role in the story. Initially, she appears as the supportive, level-headed companion, offering Dany solace and comfort as they venture into the unknown. Played by Luisi, Toni's role in the story expands significantly as the plot progresses. Though she begins as a character who seems to be there primarily to support Dany, Her own arc begins to emerge as the group faces the terror that lurks within the resort. As the mutants begin their relentless assault, Toni becomes much more than just a passive observer. She grows into a determined, strong-willed character who refuses to succumb to the fear that has overtaken their lives. Toni's transformation is subtle but powerful. Her relationship with Dany evolves as the nightmare unfolds. Initially, Toni is someone who shares Dany's desire to uncover the mysteries of his inheritance, but as the group's friends are picked off one by one, her role shifts. She becomes a fierce protector, someone who fights not just to survive but to keep Dany anchored in the terrifying reality that is quickly engulfing them. She embodies the strength that often goes unnoticed in horror films, where female characters are typically relegated to passive roles. In Wrong Turn 6, Toni is just as much a survivor as Dany, and her development in the face of overwhelming horror is essential to the story's emotional depth. Her performance is compelling because it mirrors the film's themes of survival and self-discovery. As Toni confronts the horrors of the mutants and the tragic truth about Dany's family, she struggles with her own sense of self. At times, she is forced to confront the terrifying possibility that not only may she die, but that Dany's heritage, this family of monstrous mutants, could be her death sentence as well. Her emotional vulnerability adds a layer of relatability and humanity to the film's grim narrative, and her strength in the face of insurmountable odds makes her a character worth rooting for. As for the supporting characters, they play vital roles in advancing both the narrative and the thematic explorations of the film. Chris, played by Aqueela Zoll, is one of Dany's friends who embarks on the journey with him. Chris is relatively laid-back and naive, offering moments of levity in an otherwise tense environment. However, she, too, has her moment of realization when she stumbles upon the gruesome remains of previous victims. Her reaction to the horror surrounding them marks the beginning of the slow, inevitable unraveling of the group. Chris's fate is tragic. Her sudden disappearance leaves the group vulnerable, and her death serves as a chilling reminder that no one is safe in this world. Then there's the enigmatic figure of the resort manager, a person whose shadow looms large over the group's journey. The manager, played by an unsettling actor whose presence is both cold and authoritative, is a key figure in the film's mystery, and his cryptic behavior only heightens the sense of dread. As Dany unravels the truth about his family's horrific practices, the manager becomes a representation of the resort's malevolent force, a figure who acts as both a gatekeeper to the past and a harbinger of the terror that's about to unfold. Though the manager's motives are unclear at first, his connection to the mutants, his role in facilitating the cruel, violent cycle that sustains them, becomes apparent. This shift in his character marks a critical turning point in the narrative, as he ultimately embodies the final obstacle in Dany's desperate fight for survival. In the background of the core group of survivors stands the mutant family, silent, grotesque, and deeply rooted in the film's central horror. The mutants, portrayed by a group of physical actors, bring a unique, chilling energy to the film. Their lack of speech, combined with their nightmarish appearances, is enough to create a constant sense of dread throughout the movie. But their significance goes beyond their monstrous appearance. The mutants are not just random killers. They are Dany's blood relatives, twisted versions of what his ancestors have become over generations. This revelation adds an emotional weight to their every move, as Dany is forced to come face to face with his own kin, distorted and deformed by the very practices he now finds himself inheriting. What makes the mutants so terrifying is not just their brutal violence, but the fact that they are living manifestations of a grotesque legacy that spans generations. The performers who portray the mutants do so with a raw, unsettling physicality that imbues their actions with an eerie sense of purpose. They are not mindless beasts. They are part of an ancient, monstrous family unit. This level of characterization, giving the mutants a sense of history and purpose, sets them apart from typical horror villains. They are not just obstacles to overcome. They are the embodiments of Dany's bloodline, and their relentless pursuit of him serves as a reminder that his past is never truly gone. As the film progresses, the performances of the main cast allow the horror to penetrate deeper into the psyche. Dany's arc, his transformation from innocent heir to reluctant survivor, is at the heart of the film's emotional resonance. His internal struggle, compounded by the external terror, makes him a compelling figure. His refusal to accept his heritage, His attempts to break free from the curse of his family's history are what drive the film forward. His struggle is not just physical. It is a battle of identity, one that forces him to confront the darkness within and ultimately seek redemption in a world consumed by violence. Through it all, Toni's quiet strength and loyalty to Dany serve as a powerful anchor. She is not just a survivor. She is a symbol of the possibility of hope, even in the most dire of circumstances. Her resilience, combined with her unwavering commitment to Dany, makes her a central figure in the film's emotional landscape. And while the supporting characters provide moments of tension, fear, and tragedy, it is Dany and Toni who carry the film's emotional weight. Ultimately, Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort is as much about the characters' internal transformations as it is about the external horror they face. Each character's journey is a reflection of their struggle to survive, to understand, and to escape the past that haunts them. The performances bring these characters to life in a way that transcends the typical horror film, turning what could be a simple slasher into a haunting exploration of legacy, identity, and survival. Behind the eerie and unsettling scenes of Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort lies a fascinating collection of stories and challenges that shaped the film. As much as the movie is a chilling tale of survival and grotesque horror, the journey to bring it to the screen was just as twisted, thrilling, and strange as the plot itself. From production hurdles to behind-the-scenes surprises, the making of Wrong Turn 6 was an adventure in its own right, one that pushed the boundaries of genre filmmaking and challenged the cast and crew in unexpected ways. Let's embark on a journey through some of the most fascinating and little-known aspects of the film's production, shedding light on the creative choices, the obstacles faced, and the stories that have since become part of the film's legacy. At first glance, Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort may appear to be another standard entry in the slasher genre, with its usual collection of gory kills, creepy settings, and morally complex characters. However, its production faced numerous challenges that would set it apart from other films in the Wrong Turn franchise. The movie is the sixth installment in a series that is notorious for its brutal and graphic depictions of violence. While the franchise has always leaned into gore and the macabre, Last Resort had to walk a fine line between maintaining the franchise's signature style and introducing fresh elements that would keep the audience hooked. The most significant challenge faced by the film's production was its location. While the Wrong Turn series has always been set in the desolate, remote woods of West Virginia, Last Resort was filmed in a very different location, Romania. This may seem like a surprising choice, given the story's setting in the Appalachian Mountains, but it was a decision made for several reasons. Firstly, Romania offers an abundance of dense forests and eerie landscapes that could double for the rural American setting the filmmakers were aiming for. The production team also faced significant budget constraints, and Romania, with its stunning natural beauty and relatively lower production costs, provided the perfect setting for the film. However, shooting in Romania came with its own set of challenges. The filmmakers had to navigate both language barriers and logistical issues, such as transporting the cast and crew through the rural parts of the country. The location was remote and often difficult to access, which presented significant obstacles in terms of production schedules. The crew would often have to travel hours from their base of operations just to get to the set, making each day on set an arduous journey. This physical isolation played a key role in creating the eerie and isolating atmosphere of the film, but it also tested the patience and endurance of the cast and crew. For example, during one particularly grueling stretch of filming, actor Anthony Ilott, who portrayed Dany, recalled a day where they were shooting intense scenes deep in the forest. The cold, damp weather combined with the difficult terrain made for an exhausting experience, but it was this very discomfort that helped heighten the tension on screen. The decision to film in Romania also brought its own unique set of challenges in terms of set design and props. The filmmakers had to rely on local artisans to create the various props, such as the grotesque mutant makeup and the numerous death traps scattered throughout the resort. The monstrous mutants themselves required heavy prosthetics and extensive makeup work, which added a layer of complexity to the production. The prosthetics team worked tirelessly to create the horrifying, disfigured appearances of the mutants, relying on traditional methods rather than CGI for the gruesome effects. This commitment to practical effects contributed to the film's raw, visceral feeling and helped keep the terror grounded in something more tangible and horrific. The attention to detail in the creation of the mutants also extended to their physicality. The actors portraying the mutants had to endure hours of makeup application each day, followed by even more hours of wearing the heavy prosthetics. This extreme commitment to bringing these grotesque characters to life often left the actors exhausted and, in some cases, frustrated. One of the strangest behind-the-scenes stories involves one of the actors who portrayed a mutant character. Due to the extensive makeup process, the actor was often unrecognizable to the rest of the crew and even to the director, who would occasionally mistake him for another member of the crew. The actor's sheer transformation into a completely different being was so extreme that it became a source of both fascination and humor on set, as the crew would often playfully try to identify him while he was in full costume. Speaking of the mutants, one of the most intriguing aspects of the film is the way the makeup and effects team worked to craft the unsettling looks of Dany's inbred family members. The mutants' designs were rooted in the idea of degeneration, reflecting the long history of inbreeding within Dany's family. The team went through numerous iterations to find the right look, drawing inspiration from various sources, including classic horror films and real-life medical conditions. The mutants' twisted appearances, pale, disfigured, and grotesque, are a direct reflection of the moral decay and violence that runs through the family's history. The result is a set of characters who are simultaneously terrifying and tragic, their deformed appearances embodying the curse that plagues Dany's bloodline. In keeping with the darker tone of the film, there were also several unexpected and controversial moments that surrounded the film's production. One of the most discussed topics after the release was the film's portrayal of violence and its graphic nature. While the Wrong Turn series is known for its brutal kills, Last Resort pushed the boundaries of gore even further. The filmmakers were determined to create a film that was unrelenting in its depiction of terror, but this led to some heated debates behind the scenes about the film's level of violence. Some members of the production team felt that certain scenes were too extreme, especially considering the increasingly graphic nature of horror films in general. However, the director and producers ultimately pushed for the most visceral and shocking moments to stay intact, believing that the film's success relied on its ability to horrify viewers. The film's violence also led to some challenges with ratings and distribution. Wrong Turn 6 had to be heavily edited in some countries in order to secure a theatrical release or avoid being banned altogether. While the film ultimately found its audience through VOD, video on demand, and DVD releases, the censorship challenges highlighted the growing concerns over the portrayal of excessive gore in mainstream horror films. Despite this, the movie garnered a significant fanbase, particularly among those who appreciate its unapologetic embrace of graphic horror. Another fascinating behind-the-scenes story involves the film's ending, which was one of the most hotly debated aspects of the entire production. The film's conclusion is deliberately ambiguous, leaving viewers with a sense of unease as they wonder whether Dany and Toni truly escaped the horrors of the mutants and the resort. In early drafts of the script, the ending was intended to be more definitive, with a clear resolution regarding the fate of the characters. However, after several rewrites and discussions with the cast and crew, the filmmakers decided to leave things open-ended. This decision proved to be divisive. Some felt that it was a fitting way to end the film, emphasizing the cyclical nature of the violence that had been passed down through generations, while others felt it left too many unanswered questions. Regardless, the unresolved ending became one of the most talked-about aspects of the film, with fans speculating on what the future might hold for Dany and Toni. Despite these controversies and challenges, the production of Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort is a testament to the dedication and passion of everyone involved in the project. The film's eerie atmosphere, grotesque creatures, and unrelenting violence were all made possible through a combination of creativity, resourcefulness, and determination. The cast and crew worked in difficult conditions, often battling the elements and their own exhaustion to bring the film's chilling story to life. Whether it was the painstaking makeup process for the mutants or the challenges of filming in a remote location, the production of Wrong Turn 6 was as harrowing as the story it told. One final behind-the-scenes tidbit that might surprise many fans involves the film's music. The score, which complements the film's dark and oppressive tone, was crafted by composer Michael Wandmacher. What's interesting is that Wandmacher, who had worked on previous horror films like My Bloody Valentine 3D and The Killing Room, took a very unique approach to the film's music. Instead of relying solely on traditional horror tropes, he incorporated elements of classical music, mixing it with the film's more abrasive, modern sound. This blending of styles gives the film's soundtrack an eerie, unsettling quality that adds to the sense of dread hanging over every frame. In conclusion, the making of Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort was anything but ordinary. From the challenges of shooting in a foreign country to the controversies surrounding its graphic violence, the production faced numerous hurdles. Yet through it all, the filmmakers and cast managed to craft a film that left an indelible mark on the Wrong Turn franchise. The behind-the-scenes stories, from the transformations of the mutants to the debates over the film's ending, offer a fascinating glimpse into the making of a horror film that never pulled its punches. Ultimately, Wrong Turn 6 stands as a testament to the creative risks taken by those involved and the terrifying, unforgettable journey they brought to life. The making of Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort is a fascinating tale of creativity, innovation, and perseverance. While the movie's gruesome and terrifying story may grab most viewers' attention, it's the behind-the-scenes production choices and technical achievements that truly elevate the film to a unique level within the horror genre. From the striking visuals that convey the sinister atmosphere of the resort to the innovative techniques used in the creation of the mutants, the production of Wrong Turn 6 is a testament to the team's resourcefulness and commitment to delivering a terrifying experience. Filming a horror movie that relies heavily on a remote, isolated setting poses numerous challenges. In the case of Wrong Turn 6, the decision to film in Romania was both a creative and logistical choice. Romania's forests and eerie, desolate locations became the perfect backdrop for the film's ominous atmosphere. These locations were chosen not only for their natural beauty, but also for their ability to evoke a sense of unease and isolation. However, the beauty of these landscapes came with their own unique set of challenges. Remote forests, often accessible only by narrow, treacherous roads, made transporting equipment and crew a logistical nightmare. Crew members were often forced to walk long distances to set locations, carrying heavy equipment to ensure that the film's haunting visuals could be captured. These physical challenges weren't just inconvenient. They added to the urgency and pressure that permeated the production. The isolation of the filming locations also played a critical role in shaping the emotional atmosphere of the movie. The remote forested landscape is not just a setting, but a character in its own right. The dense trees, the fog that rolls over the ground, and the unnerving silence of the wilderness all contribute to the mood of the film. These elements create a sense of danger and vulnerability, amplifying the fear that the characters experience as they venture deeper into the nightmare that the resort represents. What's most striking about Wrong Turn 6 is its commitment to practical effects and makeup. While many horror films today rely heavily on CGI to create terrifying creatures and gory moments, Last Resort took a more traditional approach, using prosthetics and makeup to bring its mutants to life. The decision to use practical effects rather than relying on computer-generated imagery speaks to the filmmaker's desire to create a raw, visceral experience for the audience. It also highlights their belief in the power of physical, tangible horror, where the grotesque features of the mutants were crafted with painstaking detail to ensure their grotesque realism. The process of creating the mutants' unsettling appearances was no easy feat. The makeup team worked tirelessly for hours each day to create the highly detailed prosthetics that transformed the actors into deformed, inbred creatures. Each mutant required a custom design, as the filmmakers wanted to ensure that no two mutants looked alike. The makeup process was often exhausting, with some actors spending up to 5 hours in the makeup chair before filming even began. The actors who portrayed the mutants underwent these extreme transformations daily, and their commitment to their roles, despite the physical discomfort, was essential to the authenticity of the film. One particularly memorable story from the production involved the length of time it took for the actors to be transformed into their mutant personas. There was one actor who played a mutant who had such an elaborate prosthetic design that it took nearly 6 hours to apply. The makeup team would work through the night to ensure that everything was perfect, and as the actor sat patiently in the chair, the only sounds were the occasional grunt or sigh as the prosthetics were carefully sculpted. This commitment to realism ensured that when these grotesque creatures appeared on screen, they didn't just feel like another piece of horror makeup. They felt like real, disturbing beings that had come to life. Despite the emphasis on practical effects, the technical team also employed groundbreaking techniques to enhance the visual storytelling of the film. One of the most notable aspects of the film's visual style is the way in which light is used to create suspense and tension. Cinematographer Alexander Blasiak worked closely with the director to ensure that the film's lighting was not only atmospheric but also heightened the sense of danger. The lighting scheme was deliberately low-key, using shadows and fog to obscure key details in the environment and making the audience feel just as lost and disoriented as the characters. In the dense forests, where visibility is often minimal, the cinematography plays with the idea of being watched, often teasing the audience with glimpses of movement in the distance or fleeting shadows in the corner of the frame. This technique draws the viewer into the environment, making them feel as if they too are being stalked by something sinister. In one of the most memorable sequences, the camera slowly pans through the trees, almost as if the audience is looking through the eyes of the killers. This slow, deliberate camera work, combined with the sparse lighting, creates an eerie feeling of dread as if the viewer is in a constant state of suspense. Blasiak's cinematography allowed the filmmakers to build tension without relying on overt scares. Instead, the film becomes an exercise in building unease through atmosphere and restraint, an approach that defies many typical horror tropes, where jump scares dominate. The sound design of Wrong Turn 6 also plays a pivotal role in establishing the unsettling atmosphere. Sound designer Dave McCrae, known for his work in the horror genre, created a haunting soundscape that complements the film's eerie visuals. From the low growls of the mutants to the unnerving creaks of the old resort, every sound was carefully crafted to immerse the audience in the nightmarish world. What makes the sound design particularly unique is the way it heightens the tension without overwhelming the audience with a constant barrage of noise. Instead, McCrae used silence to his advantage, allowing the viewer to feel the weight of each quiet moment before the inevitable terror arrives. In many ways, Wrong Turn 6 turns traditional horror filmmaking on its head. Rather than bombarding the audience with constant, loud scares, the filmmakers rely on the natural sounds of the environment. The wind rustling through the trees, the subtle creaking of old wood, and the faint sounds of footsteps behind closed doors, to create a chilling atmosphere. These auditory cues often serve as a precursor to the chaos that follows, subtly hinting at danger without fully revealing it. It's this careful manipulation of sound and silence that gives the film its unnerving rhythm and sense of dread. Another remarkable technical achievement of Wrong Turn 6 was its unique use of visual effects to enhance the gore without detracting from the film's commitment to practical effects. While the movie leaned heavily on prosthetics and makeup, there were moments where visual effects were used to enhance the gore and create more visceral reactions from the audience. For example, during some of the more graphic kill scenes, the filmmakers employed practical blood rigs combined with CGI to create more explosive and exaggerated moments of violence. These effects were used sparingly and only when necessary to intensify the impact of a particularly gruesome death. What's interesting about these moments is how seamlessly the CGI was integrated with the practical effects, creating a sense of cohesion between the two. One of the standout scenes where this combination of practical effects and CGI is most apparent occurs during the climactic battle. As the characters try to escape the mutants, the camera zooms in on the gruesome detail of the deaths, with blood splattering across the frame. The use of CGI to enhance the blood splatter, combined with the realistic prosthetics, gives the scene a level of intensity that is both shocking and visually satisfying. It's in these moments that the technical achievements of Wrong Turn 6 truly shine, blending the old-school techniques of practical effects with the modern possibilities offered by digital enhancements. Another fascinating aspect of the film's production was its costume and set design. The resort itself, with its dilapidated walls and worn-down furniture, was a character in itself. The filmmakers wanted the resort to reflect the darkness of its inhabitants and their twisted legacy. Every detail in the set design, from the cracked mirrors to the worn rugs, was chosen to evoke a sense of decay and neglect. The idea was that the resort's exterior mirrored the moral and physical decay of its owners, whose grotesque acts had created the monstrosities that lurked within the walls. The attention to detail in the costume design was similarly crucial in bringing the characters to life. The mutants' clothing was not just random, but carefully chosen to reflect their horrifying backstory. Their ragged, tattered outfits told a story of neglect and abandonment, of lives lived outside the boundaries of civilization. The costume design team worked to ensure that the attire of each mutant reflected their role in the family dynamic, showing the effects of inbreeding and their isolation from the outside world. Every stitch, every tear in their clothes, added to the feeling of tragedy and monstrosity that permeated their characters. All of these technical elements, the use of practical effects, the innovative cinematography, the precise sound design, come together to create a truly immersive experience. They all serve one purpose: to make the audience feel as though they are trapped in the same nightmare as the characters. The filmmaker's commitment to creating a visceral, authentic experience is what sets Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort apart from other films in the genre. It's a film that doesn't just rely on the story to unsettle its audience. It's a film that, through every technical decision, forces the viewer to feel the terror that the characters experience. Every shot, every sound, every gruesome detail was crafted with one goal in mind: to create a horror film that felt real, raw, and terrifyingly immersive. As the haunting narrative of Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort unfolds, what at first seems like another slasher film steeped in gore and shock quickly reveals itself to be a more complex story, rife with symbolic elements, deeper meanings, and subtle commentary on societal issues. Beneath the brutal violence, there lies a reflection of human nature, family ties, and the impact of isolation. By looking beyond the obvious shocks, Wrong Turn 6 provides a chilling mirror of the consequences of neglect, the collapse of moral boundaries, and the ways in which isolation can shape individuals into something monstrous. The story centers on Dany, a young man who discovers he has a dark family legacy tied to a secluded resort, where he meets his estranged relatives, the twisted, inbred mutants who populate the film's terrifying landscape. While the surface plot may seem to merely focus on the gore and survival of the characters, the themes of the movie run far deeper. The mutants represent a degeneration of not only the physical body but also of morality and the human spirit. Their grotesque appearance is a direct manifestation of their deeply entrenched cycle of violence, inbreeding, and abandonment. From the way their hideous features betray the scars of generations of depravity, to their actions which echo the perverse family dynamics at play, they stand as symbols of society's most disturbing tendencies when it is left unchecked and isolated. One of the most significant thematic elements in Wrong Turn 6 is the notion of family and its dark influence. Family ties are meant to offer love, protection, and stability, but in the world of this film, they are perverted into something toxic and destructive. The story plays with the idea of bloodlines being both a blessing and a curse, with Dany's discovery of his heritage acting as a key turning point. His entry into the resort, his introduction to this grotesque family that he never knew he had, marks his gradual realization that he's not just battling external forces of evil but also his own inherited nature. This theme is profoundly symbolic of the burden of legacy and how deeply ingrained histories can shape individuals, even when they are unaware of the influences. The characters' tragic fates seem inescapable, as if their grim future is sealed simply by the family they were born into. In this sense, the mutants are not just victims of their own actions, but of a history they never had a chance to escape. They symbolize the way that deeply flawed legacies, when allowed to persist and fester over generations, breed corruption, violence, and madness. The story almost seems to ask, can one ever truly escape the sins of their ancestors, or are they doomed to repeat them? Dany's eventual confrontation with his dark family history suggests that there may be no way out, no breaking the chains that bind him to the gruesome fate of his relatives. The resort itself serves as a perfect visual representation of this theme of inherited trauma. Its decaying walls, broken windows, and hidden corners echo the moral decay of the family members who inhabit it. The resort, isolated from the outside world and cut off from any form of redemption or escape, becomes a metaphor for the way that familial dysfunction traps its members in cycles of violence and despair. It's as if the building itself embodies the crumbling values of the family, a place where the decay isn't just structural but moral and psychological as well. The very design of the resort, worn down and forgotten by the outside world, suggests a parallel to how the family itself has become a relic of a time long past, one that clings to its twisted values, forever trapped in the same tragic loop. Beyond the family dynamic, the film also delves into the themes of isolation and its corrupting influence. The isolated setting of the resort in the heart of the Romanian wilderness, far from civilization and society, heightens the sense of disconnect that the characters feel. The characters aren't merely trapped in a remote location. they are also psychologically cut off from any external moral compass, making them increasingly vulnerable to the perverse influences of the mutants. The isolation acts as both a literal and figurative prison. The resort, untouched by time and the modern world, represents the dangers of total detachment from society and culture. Within the film, this theme is explored through both the inbred family, whose very existence is built upon the premise of seclusion from the outside world, and through the characters like Dany, who, despite their attempts to connect with others, find themselves drawn into a web of darkness simply by virtue of their familial ties. Isolation also plays a role in shaping the film's broader social commentary. In today's world, the idea of being cut off from the larger community resonates in various ways. For many, this sense of isolation is felt in a psychological, social, or even technological sense. We live in a world that's simultaneously hyperconnected and deeply alienating, where individuals can feel more alone despite being surrounded by others. The mutants, who have lived away from society for generations, reflect the consequences of such detachment, becoming not just physically deformed but mentally warped as well. The extreme isolation of the mutants has made them savage, their morality warped to the point where they no longer see their actions as wrong. In their eyes, their violent way of life is simply the only way they know, a product of years of neglect and separation from any form of societal order. This represents a larger social commentary on how a lack of meaningful community, or separation from society's moral frameworks, can breed corruption and monstrous behavior. This sense of dehumanization and moral decay is also explored through the film's brutal violence. Each death scene, each grisly moment of gore, is more than just a visual shock. It is a statement on the erosion of humanity when morality is abandoned. The violence in Wrong Turn 6 is not senseless. It is the result of years of living outside the moral boundaries that govern human society. The film's over-the-top gore and savage acts can be seen as symbolic of the consequences of moral collapse. When the bonds that connect individuals to each other and to a greater sense of right and wrong dissolve, the result is a brutal, primal world where violence is the only language spoken. Additionally, Wrong Turn 6 explores the issue of societal decay in the form of the resort itself. The resort's history, and its eventual fate at the hands of the mutants, mirrors the decline of human values, social structures, and trust. Just as the family's bloodline has been corrupted, so too has the resort, which was once a place of rest and escape for guests but is now reduced to a site of terror. The theme of decay extends beyond the physical realm to the social, suggesting that the breakdown of human relationships and values leads to a collapse of civilization itself. This symbolic decay represents how unchecked violence and isolation can destroy not only individual lives but entire communities, leading to a descent into chaos. The film also touches on the concept of survival and its moral implications. Dany's journey from naive outsider to someone who is fully immersed in his family's legacy forces him to grapple with the choices he makes in order to survive. His interactions with the mutants and the violent decisions he's forced to make highlight the struggle between personal survival and moral integrity. This struggle is a core element of horror as a genre, and in Wrong Turn 6, it's elevated by the fact that survival doesn't just involve facing external threats. It requires confronting one's own dark nature and the inherited violence of one's family. Another layer of social commentary arises through the film's portrayal of the other. The mutants, as isolated and grotesque as they are portrayed as a distinct, almost alien group, living on the fringes of society. Their monstrous appearance and violent behavior mark them as other in the most literal sense. However, the film also hints at the fact that this otherness is a consequence of society's failure to accept them. They are not born as monsters, but as victims of neglect and separation. Their grotesque behavior and appearance serve as a mirror to the way society often treats those who are different, those who are isolated, marginalized, or ostracized. In this way, Wrong Turn 6 critiques how societal forces can push individuals to the edges of civilization, turning them into the very monsters that society fears and demonizes. In the larger scope of the Wrong Turn series, Last Resort stands as a particularly introspective film, delving into deeper issues like family, morality, and the impact of isolation. Its combination of shocking violence, emotional turmoil, and symbolic depth makes it an intriguing exploration of human nature and the darker sides of the human psyche. The mutants, as much as they embody grotesque horror, are also tragic figures, victims of a history that has shaped them into the monstrous beings they have become. And Dany, the film's protagonist, is a reflection of how one's identity and fate can be irrevocably shaped by the environment and family into which one is born. At its core, Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort is more than just a slasher film. It's a meditation on the consequences of isolation, the moral decay of families, and the damaging effects of detachment from society. The film's brutality and horror are not only tools to shock and terrify, but also to open up a conversation about how violence and isolation can shape individuals and communities into something unrecognizable, something monstrous. Through its terrifying imagery and gripping storyline, Wrong Turn 6 serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of severing the connections that bind us to the greater moral framework of humanity. The real horror, after all, is not just the mutants lurking in the shadows. It's the legacy they represent, and the reality of what happens when we stop caring for each other. The cinematic journey of Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort is more than just an exploration of terror and gore. It's an intricate dance of visuals, sounds, and editing that elevates the story into an immersive experience. Behind the scenes, the filmmakers employed a variety of techniques that make the film stand out within the horror genre. Cinematography, visual style, sound design, and editing choices are woven together to create an atmosphere of tension and unease that draws the viewer deeper into the nightmarish world of the mutants and the decaying resort. These elements not only serve to drive the narrative but also to enhance the thematic undertones of the film, amplifying its darker messages about isolation, family, and moral decay. From the first frame, it's clear that the filmmakers weren't content with delivering a standard slasher flick. Instead, Wrong Turn 6 takes great care to develop a distinct visual style that enhances the film's unsettling atmosphere. The choice of locations, remote forests and a dilapidated, crumbling resort, helps establish the sense of isolation, both physical and psychological, that permeates the film. The vast, foreboding landscape of the Romanian wilderness looms large over the characters, a constant reminder of their entrapment. The dense, towering trees surrounding the resort create an oppressive environment, where visibility is limited and danger lurks in every shadow. The location itself becomes a character in the story, an ever-present force that heightens the tension and sets the tone for the horrors that are to unfold. Cinematographer Alexander Blasiak's work on Wrong Turn 6 is instrumental in translating the eerie mood of the setting into visual language. The framing of shots plays with the idea of confinement and disorientation, allowing the viewer to feel as though they too are trapped within the claustrophobic world of the mutants. Blasiak uses a combination of wide shots and close-ups to create a sense of scale and isolation. The wide shots, often showcasing the expansive forests or the empty halls of the resort, emphasize just how alone the characters are, while the close-ups of characters' faces, sweating, terrified, and panicked, bring the emotional stakes to the forefront. By alternating between these two types of shots, the cinematography builds a sense of tension that reflects the characters' fear and their growing realization that they are at the mercy of forces beyond their control. The use of low-key lighting is another key technique that contributes to the film's atmospheric tone. Lighting plays a significant role in horror films, as it has the power to evoke dread, mystery, and suspense. In Wrong Turn 6, the filmmakers rely heavily on shadows to conceal threats and create an unsettling environment. The resort, with its decaying walls and cracked windows, is bathed in low, flickering light, giving it a ghostly, haunted quality. This use of dim lighting prevents the viewer from fully understanding what is lurking just outside the frame, keeping them on edge and adding to the sense of constant danger. In particular, the dark hallways of the resort are lit in such a way that the viewer never feels fully comfortable, as if the space itself is alive, ready to swallow the characters whole. One of the standout visual techniques employed in Wrong Turn 6 is the use of framing to evoke the feeling of being watched. In several key moments, the camera lingers just outside the character's line of sight, forcing the viewer to see what they cannot. These voyeuristic shots, often accompanied by subtle sounds or movement just beyond the frame, create a sense of paranoia and unease. The camera seems to observe the characters as they wander deeper into the horrors of the resort, adding to the idea that they are being hunted by an unseen force. It's an effective way to involve the audience in the narrative, as they are made to feel complicit in the horror. These visual cues, combined with the lurking presence of the mutants, turn the viewer into a silent observer of the character's slow descent into terror. The film also plays with the concept of space to build suspense. In the resort, the characters are often confined to tight spaces, narrow hallways, small rooms, and hidden basements that heighten the feeling of being trapped. The camera frequently explores these confined spaces, emphasizing the character's lack of escape. These claustrophobic shots are often contrasted with the wider, more open shots of the forest, which serves as a constant reminder that there is no place to hide. The decision to keep the characters inside the resort for much of the film enhances the sense of confinement and ensures that the audience feels the weight of the character's isolation. Another visual motif that enhances the horror in Wrong Turn 6 is the extensive use of blood and gore, which is portrayed in a way that feels both shocking and visceral. The filmmakers use practical effects and makeup to create grotesque and realistic depictions of violence, with each kill scene more brutal than the last. The practical effects team went to great lengths to create convincing prosthetics and wounds, ensuring that the gore felt tangible and raw. These sequences are shot with meticulous care, with the camera lingering on the gruesome details of each death, heightening the emotional impact of the violence. The physicality of the gore is amplified by the film's unflinching camera work, which refuses to shy away from the brutal reality of the mutants' actions. This commitment to practical effects, combined with the film's tense atmosphere, ensures that the violence is not just shocking, but emotionally and psychologically devastating as well. The editing in Wrong Turn 6 is another key component of its visual storytelling. The pace of the film is carefully controlled, with moments of heightened tension giving way to sudden bursts of violence. This rhythm allows the filmmakers to create a sense of unpredictability, keeping the audience on edge throughout. One of the most effective editing choices is the way in which the film cuts between the characters and the mutants, building suspense as the audience becomes aware of the impending danger before the characters do. These quick, jarring cuts create a sense of urgency and heighten the emotional stakes, making the audience feel as though they too are caught in the same web of danger and terror. In addition to the cinematography and editing, the sound design of Wrong Turn 6 is another crucial element that enhances the film's tension. Sound is an essential part of creating atmosphere, and the filmmakers use it to their advantage to build a sense of dread and discomfort. The sound design is layered, with subtle sounds, creaking floorboards, distant whispers, and the rustling of leaves, building a soundscape that feels both organic and unsettling. These sounds serve as a constant reminder that something is lurking just beyond the frame, waiting to strike. The audio often operates in tandem with the visual elements, using silence to heighten the tension before an explosion of sound or violence. This careful manipulation of sound heightens the emotional impact of the film, making each scare feel earned and impactful. The use of music in Wrong Turn 6 also plays a significant role in shaping the film's atmosphere. The score, composed by the talented Lorne Balfe, complements the visuals with its haunting melodies and ominous tones. The music often operates in the background, subtly guiding the viewer's emotions and adding to the overall sense of unease. The score builds gradually, with strings and low drones creating a sense of impending doom. The music's sparse use, often dropping out at key moments, keeps the viewer's focus on the action and the terrifying silence that precedes the chaos. When the music swells, it adds to the intensity of the scenes, particularly during the climactic moments of violence and terror. The combination of sound and music creates an immersive experience that envelops the viewer in the world of the film, making them feel as though they are right there with the characters, facing the horrors of the mutants and the resort. The director's vision is unmistakably realized through these stylistic choices. The emphasis on atmosphere, visual tension, and visceral gore demonstrates a clear intention to not only shock but to also provoke a deeper emotional response from the audience. Director Valeri Milev brings a sense of dread and claustrophobia to the film, using the confined spaces of the resort and the sprawling wilderness to mirror the characters' psychological states. His ability to manipulate visual and auditory elements to create tension speaks to a deep understanding of the genre, as well as a commitment to telling a story that is both visually compelling and emotionally resonant. The style of the film is a reflection of the director's desire to engage the audience on a deeper level, drawing them into the character's world and making them feel the terror and hopelessness that accompany their journey. Throughout Wrong Turn 6, every frame, every sound, and every edit is designed to pull the audience deeper into a nightmarish world where danger lurks at every turn. The filmmakers use visual storytelling, sound design, and music not just as tools to support the narrative but as key elements that shape the overall experience. By combining these techniques with the film's unsettling themes, the filmmakers create a horror film that is as emotionally affecting as it is terrifying. Through its meticulous attention to detail, Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort becomes a haunting journey that lingers long after the credits roll, leaving an indelible mark on those who venture into its dark, twisted world. In Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort, every visual choice, every sound cue, and every edit is meticulously crafted to pull the audience deeper into its claustrophobic world. While the film is inherently a slasher with gruesome violence and thrilling suspense, it's the use of cinematic techniques and visual storytelling that transforms this movie into an unnerving and immersive experience. The filmmakers employ a visual language that speaks volumes, using cinematography, editing, sound design, and music to create a mood of unease, anticipation, and dread. These elements are not simply tools to tell the story. They are integral to the way the film communicates its deeper themes and the characters' psychological states, ensuring that the viewer doesn't just watch the horror unfold, but feels it. From the very first frame, the visual style of Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort sets the tone for the rest of the film. The cinematography by Alexander Blasiak, whose work is integral to the unsettling atmosphere of the movie, expertly uses color, framing, and composition to reflect the isolation and decay that define the narrative. The first moments of the film draw the viewer into the story through wide, expansive shots of the rugged, desolate landscape. The Romanian forests surrounding the resort, dense with tall, unyielding trees, seem to close in on the characters, emphasizing the isolation they experience. These natural, imposing surroundings are not just a backdrop but become an active participant in the film's tension, making the wilderness feel almost alive, as if the characters are intruding on a space that is both unforgiving and filled with latent danger. Blasiak's cinematography works in tandem with the film's narrative structure, emphasizing a sense of confinement and helplessness. As the film progresses and the characters move inside the resort, the cinematographic style shifts to reflect their growing fear and sense of being trapped. Here, Blasiak moves away from the wide shots of the open wilderness and focuses instead on tighter, more claustrophobic framing. The resort's decaying architecture, crumbling walls, long, narrow hallways, and dark corners, becomes an extension of the character's psyche, mirroring their descent into chaos. The close-ups, especially during moments of high tension or horror, further amplify the emotional stakes, placing the audience in the character's shoes. These tight shots capture the raw terror etched onto their faces, creating an emotional connection between the characters and the audience. The use of lighting is another key component of the film's visual storytelling. Wrong Turn 6 employs low-key lighting throughout most of the film, shrouding much of the action in darkness, which not only heightens the suspense but also reflects the moral decay present within the story. In the darker corners of the resort, where the mutants lurk and the violence takes place, the low-light setups make it difficult for both the characters and the viewers to fully discern what's lurking in the shadows, enhancing the feeling of danger and uncertainty. By focusing on shadows and silhouettes, the filmmakers allow the audience to fill in the gaps, which often results in a more terrifying experience than when everything is clearly visible. The ambiguity of the visual space serves to unsettle the viewer, as they are never quite sure what's real and what's a product of the characters' growing paranoia. The filmmakers use these lighting techniques not just for their aesthetic appeal, but to underscore the moral ambiguity at play. The mutants, whose deformed bodies reflect generations of inbreeding and violence, are often lit in harsh, contrasting ways. This visual approach makes them appear grotesque and otherworldly, emphasizing their difference from the normal characters. The darkness surrounding them also acts as a metaphor for their moral corruption, shadowy figures emerging from the unknown, threatening to swallow the protagonist's whole. The contrast between light and dark is also significant in representing the clash between innocence and corruption, with the bright moments often being fleeting and the dark moments overwhelming. As crucial as cinematography is to the film's visual storytelling, editing plays a significant role in shaping the pacing, suspense, and emotional resonance of Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort. The editing, led by editor Craig McCarthy, reflects a keen sense of timing, knowing precisely when to allow tension to build and when to release it with a sudden burst of violence. The film employs quick cuts, especially in the moments leading up to a kill, which creates a sense of urgency and keeps the viewer on edge. The jump cuts, which shift quickly from one image to another, mirror the chaotic, fragmented nature of the characters' lives as they unravel in the face of terror. However, the editing is not just about fast-paced action. At times, it takes a more deliberate approach, allowing the viewer to linger on a moment of dread before cutting away to the next scene. For instance, during key moments when the mutants approach, the camera lingers on the characters' faces, waiting for a reaction. These pauses in the action are effective because they create an emotional build-up, intensifying the moment of terror when it finally arrives. This measured editing creates a rhythm that alternates between slow, suspenseful sequences and fast-paced moments of violence, keeping the viewer engaged and disoriented. It also serves to highlight the ever-present tension in the film, the sense that something is always waiting to jump out, just beyond the frame. The editing also works in harmony with the film's sound design to further elevate the sense of unease. Wrong Turn 6 uses sound as a vital storytelling tool. Sound design, led by sound designer Neil Meadows, plays an essential role in heightening the film's suspense and emotional impact. The sound of creaking wood, the soft rustling of leaves in the wind, and the occasional growl or scream that echoes through the corridors all work together to build an auditory landscape of tension and dread. The ambient noises, seemingly innocuous at first, gradually become more foreboding, signaling the presence of danger even when the viewer cannot see it. The use of silence is also pivotal in Wrong Turn 6, with the filmmakers often opting for eerie quiet moments before an explosive burst of sound or action. This creates a sense of anticipation, where the audience's heightened awareness of the silence primes them for what's coming next. This technique is particularly effective in the resort's interior, where the silence amplifies the character's growing sense of isolation. When a sudden sound or jarring noise breaks the quiet, like a scream or the sound of footsteps echoing down the hallway, the impact is immediate and shocking. These shifts between silence and noise keep the audience engaged, creating an unpredictable audio landscape that mirrors the uncertainty and fear felt by the characters. Equally crucial to the film's auditory experience is the musical score, composed by Lorne Balfe. The score complements the visual and sound design by adding another layer of emotional depth to the film. Balfe's music uses a mix of strings, deep drones, and subtle, dissonant tones to create a sense of impending doom. The score is often low and rumbling, providing an ominous undercurrent to the film's quieter moments. When the action intensifies, the music swells, adding to the sense of danger and urgency. One of the key ways Balfe's score stands out is in its minimalistic approach. The music isn't overpowering, but it's always present, guiding the viewer's emotional response to the action. In moments of intense violence, the music builds to a crescendo, mirroring the on-screen chaos. In quieter, more introspective moments, the music recedes into the background, leaving space for the tension to build through sound design alone. Together, the sound design and the musical score create a sonic landscape that is as unsettling as the film's visuals. The auditory choices not only deepen the horror but also underscore the psychological toll that the characters are experiencing as they realize the true nature of the forces surrounding them. The sound is both a tool of suspense and an emotional amplifier, heightening the impact of each moment of terror. The director, Valeri Milev, infuses the entire film with a distinct vision that can be felt through every cinematic choice. His use of framing, composition, and pacing suggests an intention to create not just a horror film, but an exploration of fear itself. The claustrophobia of the resort and the foreboding presence of the mutants are mirrored in the way the film is structured. Tight, controlled, and always under pressure. Milev employs slow reveals, teasing the horrors that lie in wait while building a palpable sense of dread. His ability to keep the viewer on edge without fully showing the threat is a hallmark of his directorial style, allowing the unseen to be just as terrifying as what's on screen. Milev also makes a conscious decision to root the horror in a sense of emotional realism. As the film progresses, the tension between the characters grows, and the violence becomes more personal. This psychological depth is mirrored in the cinematography, where the emotional state of the characters is reflected in the visuals. The use of close-ups, especially on Dany's face as he grapples with his family's dark past, allows the viewer to connect with his internal struggle. Milev's direction brings a subtle human element to the film, emphasizing that the horror the characters experience is not just external but also psychological. The resort is not merely a setting for the terror. It is a symbol of the characters' entrapment in a cycle of violence that they cannot escape. In terms of stylistic choices, Milev is unafraid to push the boundaries of the genre, making bold decisions that set the film apart from other slasher films. The use of slow-burning tension, followed by moments of intense violence, creates a rhythm that is unique to this entry in the Wrong Turn series. Milev's approach to violence also stands out. While there is certainly an abundance of gore, the film never treats it as gratuitous. Instead, the violence is purposeful, each death serving to heighten the emotional stakes and the feeling of impending doom. Ultimately, Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort is a film that uses every element of its craft, cinematography, editing, sound design, and music, to tell a story of isolation, fear, and familial ties. These cinematic techniques work together to create an experience that is far more than a typical slasher flick. They transform the film into a deeply immersive journey, one that engages not just the viewer's sense of shock but also their emotions and psychological responses. Milev's direction, coupled with the film's carefully constructed visuals and sound, ensures that Wrong Turn 6 leaves a lasting impression, not just for its scares, but for its ability to tap into the deepest corners of fear. Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort may have flown under the radar for many horror enthusiasts at the time of its release, but as years have passed, the film has earned a unique place within the horror genre. While it may not have become a blockbuster hit or received widespread critical acclaim, its impact on both the Wrong Turn series and the broader landscape of horror filmmaking is undeniable. This film marks a significant point in the evolution of horror, blending slasher tropes with deeper psychological and emotional undertones, while simultaneously serving as a reflection of societal fears that resonate with audiences long after the credits roll. When examining the cultural legacy of Wrong Turn 6, it's clear that its influence extends beyond its own niche within the horror genre. At its core, the film continues the Wrong Turn series tradition of exploring isolation and survival in the face of monstrous threats. Yet, it does so with a fresh lens, one that feels grounded in a deep exploration of character psychology and the ties that bind. This thematic depth made Wrong Turn 6 an entry point for those seeking more than just mindless gore. It reflected a growing trend in horror filmmaking during the 2010s, where psychological horror, intense personal conflict, and character-driven narratives became increasingly prevalent in slasher films. The film's success in building a sense of dread and isolation gave rise to a subgenre of horror that focused more on atmospheric tension and less on overt shock value. While Wrong Turn 6 still delivered its fair share of bloody violence, its real triumph lay in its ability to create a pervasive sense of fear through visual and auditory techniques, rather than relying purely on the visceral thrill of gore. This approach contributed to the growing shift within horror films where filmmakers began to experiment with pacing, mood, and thematic depth. In this way, Wrong Turn 6 participated in a larger movement that would see films like The Witch, It Follows, and Hereditary come to prominence in the years following its release. Each of these films, like Wrong Turn 6, made a case for the evolving complexity of horror cinema, where audiences were not simply meant to be scared but also invited to reflect on deeper, often existential, questions. In terms of its lasting impact, Wrong Turn 6 was a key installment that helped shape the future direction of its own series. The film's themes of family, identity, and survival became central to the ongoing narrative of the Wrong Turn franchise, which continues to explore these motifs in subsequent sequels. While the Wrong Turn films had always played with the idea of mutants lurking in the woods, it was Wrong Turn 6 that solidified the focus on the sinister undercurrents of family ties and moral corruption. This development would inform later entries in the series, which, while maintaining the franchise's hallmark gore and violence, began to delve more into the psychology of its characters and the implications of their backstories. On a broader scale, Wrong Turn 6 was part of a movement in the 2010s where horror films began to reclaim their place as a form of serious artistic expression. The film might not have garnered major awards or critical acclaim in the way that other standout horror films did, but its influence can be seen in the broader cultural embrace of horror as a genre capable of exploring complex emotional and social issues. In an era where horror films were often dismissed as mindless entertainment, Wrong Turn 6 was among a series of films that helped redefine the genre as a vehicle for more profound narrative and thematic exploration. Even beyond the film's immediate influence on its genre, Wrong Turn 6 made waves within pop culture, particularly within the subculture of horror aficionados and the internet communities that follow such franchises. The film's mix of shocking violence, psychological complexity, and morally ambiguous characters gave it a lasting presence in online discussions, where it quickly became an object of fascination for fans of both the Wrong Turn series and the slasher genre as a whole. It is regularly cited in online forums and horror retrospectives as an example of how the genre can evolve beyond its gory roots into something more nuanced and unsettling. One of the lasting aspects of Wrong Turn 6 that remains culturally significant is the way it highlights themes of family and corruption, concepts that have resonated with audiences well beyond the confines of its genre. The film explores the idea of an isolated, dysfunctional family, which became a recurring motif in horror throughout the decade. The idea of a family being twisted by corruption and inbreeding, a theme that dates back to the early Texas Chainsaw Massacre films, was brought into the modern context of Wrong Turn 6 in a way that spoke to contemporary fears about family secrets, the darkness that hides beneath the surface, and the potential for violence within even the most familiar of spaces. These themes, combined with the visceral horror of the film's brutal kills and twisted family dynamics, make it a particularly effective exploration of the fears surrounding family life and generational trauma. The legacy of Wrong Turn 6 is also embedded in its subversion of traditional slasher tropes. While the film does follow many of the genre's conventions, group of friends stuck in an isolated location, a ruthless killer or killers, and graphic violence, it also offers moments of deeper reflection that ask viewers to consider not just what's happening on the surface but also the psychological and emotional undercurrents. Dany's struggles with identity and family legacy are revealed in moments that provide emotional resonance, something often missing in more formulaic horror entries. These moments made Wrong Turn 6 stand out, not just as another horror sequel, but as a film that dared to ask more of its audience, blending the thrills of the genre with a somber, introspective examination of what makes a family, and the devastation that can arise when that foundation is shattered. Despite its flaws, including occasionally forced plot twists and the reliance on certain familiar slasher tropes, Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort has earned its place as a cultural artifact of the 2010s. Its visual style and attention to atmospheric horror established it as one of the more interesting entries in the series, reflecting a growing sophistication within the slasher subgenre and horror in general. It proved that even in a well-worn franchise like Wrong Turn, filmmakers could innovate and experiment, taking familiar themes and giving them new life in ways that continued to resonate with audiences. Looking back on Wrong Turn 6, it's clear that its cultural relevance endures. While it may not be discussed in the same breath as the genre-defining classics of the 1970s and 1980s, it carved out a space for itself in the more contemporary narrative of horror. The film's legacy lies in its ability to mesh visceral terror with the psychological, its subversion of genre norms, and its exploration of family and isolation in a modern context. It is these qualities that have allowed Wrong Turn 6 to remain significant over time, proving that even films that don't achieve mainstream success or critical accolades can have a lasting impact on a genre and shape the way future films are made. In conclusion, Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort was more than just a horror film. It was a bold attempt to reinvigorate a dying subgenre with psychological complexity and a renewed focus on the deeper emotional and thematic layers of horror. While it may not have received the attention it deserved upon release, its influence continues to echo throughout horror, both in the Wrong Turn franchise and the broader genre itself. The film's legacy is defined by its commitment to exploring family dynamics, isolation, and the psychological horror lurking beneath the surface, making it an essential part of the cinematic landscape for years to come.